Hi all. Before I do this video this morning, I just wanted to say thanks so much for all you subscribers. I can't believe how this thing took off in just a couple of days. I started on Friday, uploaded a load of my videos on History Biker, about history, and by Sunday I got 200 people subscribing. It's unbelievable. I didn't think anybody would be interested in my waffling, but it seems that I'm not the only motorcyclist interested in history, which is terrific. I know these subscribers, they were driven here by Craig Jones, who's a great pal, and I'm so indebted and grateful to him for helping me out and pushing this channel. I hope you'll carry on. Anyhow, as promised this morning, I'm in back streets of Birmingham. This is Lady Pool Road in Balsall Heath. This is what it looks like in 2020, Lady Pool Road. There we go. I'm a Brummie kid myself. I was just born about 3 miles from here, southwest in a place called Shenley Green. But this is Balsall Heath, and I'm here for particular reasons, because for you motorcyclists watching, and for me, this is an important place. This place was the birthplace of a chap called R Davies, who changed the shape of motorcycling for us. It was never the same again after he was born. And he was born right here at this place. If you see, I've been going up and down this road looking for number 351, and I found, let's see here, most of these are now, let's get out of the sun, most of these now shops at the bottom, as you can see, and still with living accommodation over the top. And this one here, where these roller shutter blinds are behind me, that's number 351. And Howard Raymond Davies was born there in 1895. Some of you probably recognise his name, and some of you won't. You might know him better as HRD, which became much more famous later on. But anyway, Howard was born here, 1895, like I said. His family moved to Wolverhampton after he lived here for a few years, and he went to school and everything. But when he left school, he got a job with AJS as an apprentice, and talked his way into working for them as a test rider like me. You can't blame him for doing that, can you? It's what I always wanted to do as well. Look at that place. Amazing to think he stood here on the street. Would have looked a bit different in those days. Anyway, there he was at AJS working as a dispatch rider, a test rider rather. But it wasn't good enough. He wanted to race. He was desperate to race, and he left there after a short while and joined a motorcycle company called Plino, another British manufacturer, Plino, because that gave him scope. They were connected with Sunbeam motorcycles, and they allowed him to race. He test rode for them, and he raced. His very first race with them was an ISDT, and he blew it a bit. He didn't do terrifically well, and after the race was over, he went AWOL. He went missing. I don't know what happened to him. Nobody knows where he disappeared. But because of that, they sacked him. A very short time later, though, he managed to talk his way back in to letting him ride for them again. And in 1914, he did very well. The Isle of Man getting a second place. So he really sort of made amends there. Anyway, 1914. There's a landmark here, isn't it? Start of the First World War. So Howard's just about made a name for himself as a racer. But the war started, so he joined the Royal Engineers and became a dispatch rider on the Western Front. That wasn't quite exciting enough for him, so he jumped ship and went to the Royal Flying Corps and became a pilot. He was a fighter pilot. I mean, what a life so far, it's incredible. So he became a fighter pilot. After a short while, as happened to all First World fighter pilots, we all know, because we've all seen Blackadder, we know what happens. He was shot down, thankfully surviving that. Germans took him prisoner, and he spent a couple of years trying to escape unsuccessfully. But in the meantime, back in England, people thought he'd been killed. And which paper was it? I've got it written down here. It's the Express and Star. Express and Star here in the Midlands actually wrote an obituary about him and his life, and his motorcycle racing, and his, everything. Which after the war, when he finally did get home, having still been alive, of course, he kept a newspaper cutting of that in his wallet and carried it around with him. I'd do the same. Anyhow, First World War's finished, and he manages to start riding again with the AJS team in 1920, enters the junior and senior TT races, but he retired from both of them due to mechanical failures, which was really, it was common in those days. These are the early days for racing. But he decided he could do better, and he started thinking of ways to build a better bike. And this is where the beginning of HRD starts, really, because he came up with all kinds of amazing things that we take for granted nowadays. He took their bikes, he shortened the chassis for better handling, he moved the engine further forward so the bike was better balanced, he altered the steering head so it steered quicker. He invented the saddle tank as we know it. I mean, all these things are so common to us nowadays. The saddle tank, something as simple as that. Up to now, of course, we'd had flat tankers, but HRD, Howard, he came up with the saddle tank as we know it, straddling the single top tube, which of course is still incredibly common today. And he created these bikes that he called after himself, HRD, his own initials. He did very well in racing, setting all kinds of records at Brooklands and at the TTs and so forth. But it's a shame that the company was short-lived. It only lasted just over 3 years, and he was in financial trouble. People wanted his bikes, but he hadn't got the capacity to build them. And that's what finished him. And he went into voluntary liquidation in 1928, and the company name and all the tooling came up for sale. It was purchased by, now you're probably going to think I'm going to say Phil Vincent, but I'm not. It's actually bought by OK Supreme for a short while. They bought the name and the tooling, and then sold on to Phil Vincent, who's a very famous name in the industry, of course. You probably all know him. For £450. That's what Phil Vincent paid for HRD, the name and all the tooling. 450 quid. And they continued, of course, and we all know about Vincent, how successful they were and how they came up with the V-twin. They stopped using the HRD name, of course. It was HRD Vincent, and the early Vincents had HRD on the tank. But things started getting confusing. I mean, Vincent wanted to use the HRD name because Howard was well known for creating great bikes, fabulous quality, everything about them, a bit like Brough. He'd gone out of his way to get the best quality parts he could. They got Jap engines, the best brakes that were available in the day, the best forks, everything. So Vincent wanted to capitalize on the HRD name, so the Vincents had HRD on the tank for a while. But once Vincent started selling in America, people were getting confused, HRD and HD for Harley Davidson, so they dropped the HRD and Vincent became simply Vincent. It's a shame, isn't it? But of course, a great company in their own right. Great company. Anyway, this is where it all started here, and it's what changed the shape of motorcycling for us. This place behind me with these roller shutters, it's a shame. I think the upstairs must have been knocked down at some point. It was Victorian semis, of course, or a row of Victorian houses anyway. May even have been blown up in the war, who knows. This area was bombed heavily in the Second World War. But it's just amazing to think that this is where it started, Lady Pool Road. And there it is today, in 2020. Bit different from the way it looked in 1895, I suspect. So you're probably wondering what happened to Howard after he sold up. Well, not many people bothered finding out, really. He sort of disappeared into almost obscurity. What he actually did, he went to work as an advisor for Alvis Cars, and then with a company called Swallow in Coventry, and then set up his own business as well, again in Coventry, selling bikes and motor cars as well, and lived until 1973. So he had a good long life, and he kept up with racing. Didn't take part himself, but he kept up with what was going on the scene. There it is. And he ended up living in a little place called Chadwick End, which is a village in Warwickshire, the village next to where I live actually in Warwickshire. Nice place. I'm still looking for his house now. It's only a very small village, and I haven't been able to trace his actual address in that village, but if I do, I'll tell you. But this is where it started, Lady Pool Road. There we go. Anyhow, that's just something I was interested in telling you this morning, because I love to know. I'm particularly interested in test riders like me. I like to know what they got up to and the way they shaped early motorcycling. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed that, and hope to see you again soon. Keep watching, eh? Bye.